And I haven't been to this house where my parents were, or they were living at the moment. I go there, and my sister and a few of my cousins, they're downstairs. They're waiting outside the gate. And I think it's when I saw them, I just broke down.
Hey, welcome back to The Day After. In today's episode, we sit down with Juhi, who, while enjoying a vacation in Italy with her husband and young child, she received the devastating news of her mother's passing. She found herself so far from home, navigating the complexities of trying to obtain a visa so she can go give her final farewell to her mom back in India. It's a journey filled with heartache, resilience, and tremendous honesty. Also, I invite you to join us and become a part of the Day After community. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us keep the show going. You can go to thedayafter.com/plus and sign up for the price of one coffee a month. Okay, sit back, relax, and delve into the depths of the human experience on The Day After.
My name is Juhi, and because we are talking about law, so it's important to mention for me in my introduction that I live in California, United States. I live here with my family, with my husband and my 3-year-old. And I've been living here for about 7 years or so. And for not just me, for my husband as well, we both have our families in India, in Delhi. They all live pretty close by. We don't have any family as such here. So we've found our own community here wherever we live. But yeah, that's the setup. And we're talking about pretty close to a year minus 2 days from today. We were traveling in Europe. Also some history that's related to COVID, but COVID hit in March 2020. I mean, in US as such, was declared a pandemic, and I was in the third trimester then. So, I had a newborn in May 2020, which meant we lived a very closed life, we weren't going out anywhere, nowhere, nothing, and no visitors, nothing happening. So it was after 2 years, there was vaccinations everywhere, and we got vaccinated, and we felt like, let's make a trip. Our kid was 2-year-old then. So we decided to live and work out of Europe for 6 or 7 weeks, something like that, over the summer. And we were like, we'll have a nanny with us to take care of the kid. We'll just work as usual and just be in Europe, because we've been literally in the house, for 2 years. And it was during this trip even before that, a little bit more backstory there. This was August 2022. And it was in June 2022 that my sister called me saying that my mom has been diagnosed with cancer somewhere in her body, and they're trying to figure out where it is exactly. It's kind of spread a little bit. So we figured it was ovarian cancer. And by the time we made the trip, her chemo had started. She was responding pretty well to chemo and doing her dietary things and everything. And of course, there's the question, I live so far away. There was this question of like, for me, it was like, should I go now? You always have that. But it seemed like, I spoke to my mom, I spoke to my family members, everything seemed like, of course it was not fine, but not to the extent of, this is an emergency, come now, book your flight. So I was like, well, we're going to be in Europe. I might as well, I might do like a 3-day trip from Europe to India. It's a shorter trip. I'll leave my kid, my nanny and husband will be there. I'll just go do a quick trip and come back to Europe. Because we were traveling to multiple countries in Europe, I put it in that planning sheet that I will be in India and all of that. Meanwhile, November, my husband was going to go to a big trip for a month long. And I thought, because my husband will be out, I'll just go with the kid in November and spend the entire month in India, I'll just be there for the whole time. And if I have to do the trip while I'm in Europe for the 3-day, we'll decide closer to time based on how things are going. Everything was fine. She was responding to chemo fine, everything fine, whatever. We were in Europe, and I get a text message from my brother. I call it a thing from the movies. And I was just looking at it, and he goes, "Mommy is no more. Book your next flight."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was the text?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So you had the 2-year-old.
Yeah.
You're in Europe. You're with your
Yeah.
husband, and you're planning on going to India to be with your mom for a month in November. You were
Yeah.
going to take your child. So
Yeah.
it's August 25th, and you get this text. What happens next?
I think me and my husband I had spoken to him about like, should I go? And my husband had visited India a month before for work, and he had seen my mom. So, you have those conversations. So how is it? How I've not seen cancer close. I still haven't seen cancer closely, that ways, but I was like, how is it? Like, should I, should I go now? And then we thought that, okay, we'll take a call when we're in Europe. If things suddenly go a little bit off, seem a little bit off, you can just book a flight the next day and you can just go. Right. So and I saw their photos. Misconception, right? I guess it looked healthy. Everything looked healthy. Mom looked healthy, and I was getting her text messages. Keep sending me photos wherever you are, and like till the day ago, until like one day before, and everything. So the communication was like pretty normal, and all of that. We were outside somewhere, and my husband looked at his phone, and he's like, "Your brother called me." And I have a missed call from him. So I was like, it's fine, I'll call him. So I take out my phone and I see this message. We were in the bus, so I probably didn't hear it at the time. And my instant reaction is, I didn't go.
Oh.
Because I was like, I didn't go. What did I do? And the last time I had seen my mom was in, I don't know, 2018, December.
Wow. So it was a long time.
Yeah, because they were due to come before, when I was giving birth, they were due to come and help out. But because of COVID, they couldn't come. And so my first reaction was like, I didn't go. You're just like, I didn't go. And then that's it. And then the second wave was logistics, because we were in Europe. We were in Italy as country wise, and this is August. And the same year in January, we had just become US citizens, which meant I'm a US citizen in Italy and I need a visa to go to India. I just cannot book a flight, and I just cannot go to India, and I just can't go. So the next thing, and my husband had a visa because he had, he went a month ago for work. So he had figured it out. And my next reaction was like, how are we going to get a visa? Like, what's going to happen? So the next step was all logistics, because like I said, we were in this small place. And then of course we rushed back to our Airbnb, and we were like looking online for how to get a visa. And it's complicated because you get, for example, you're an Indian citizen, you're in India, you get a visa from your home country. My home country is United States, and I'm too far from it. I'm right in the middle, and I'm just like, I have to, and I can't go. So I looked online a lot. It was a Friday, I think. There's this emergency visa thing, but you apply and then you get a response by Monday. And I'm like, I can't wait. I was just like, okay, this is not, it can't wait. So I call a long lost travel agent friend based in India, and I said, and probably he was hearing my voice after, I don't even know, 10 years or so. And I think that was the first time I actually said to someone, and I was like, listen, my mom died. I'm here. I'm a US citizen. I need to be in India. What should I do? And he was like, call the embassy in Rome, I think, in some country. He was like, because that was closer. And he was like, so I call this number, some person picks up, and he's like, for some reason, he says, you should go to this embassy in Ljubljana. So Ljubljana, Indian embassy in Ljubljana, which is in Slovenia, was the closest.
Oh my
to us.
gosh.
No.
So my husband books a taxi somehow, and me, my 2-year-old, and my nanny, we get in the taxi, and he's like, you'll go to, and of course my husband is looking at me because, it's like, what, we don't even, I think for me, it became like, I have to solve this problem right now. That's all I know. And so I just went to that embassy while my husband was like, I'm going to pack all of this stuff that we have, and I'll come in the second taxi. But it was, I don't know, 2 p.m. or something like that. And then the embassy will close at 4 or 5 or whatever. So I just go to that embassy. It's a 2 hour, I don't even remember, 2 or 3 hour ride. And of course, I pack enough food for my 2-year-old because, you're not by yourself. By yourself, it's a very different story. If you're just, you can figure it out. So you do all that. And then I go at the embassy, and at the reception, that person is like, oh, we can't give you a visa here because I'm a US citizen.
No.
And I was like, listen. And for me, it was like, I'm not leaving. In my head, I was like, I'm not leaving.
Right.
I need a visa now. I can't go. So I was like, okay, listen, my mom just passed away. And these are the Indian traditions or whatever you want to call it. But even if you give me a visa today, the soonest flight is tomorrow morning. I reach India by Sunday morning. They are waiting enough for me. And I think she called someone from the office. Some guy came downstairs. I repeat the whole story. And he was like, because he was like, why don't you go apply for this emergency visa? You're going to get it on Monday. And I was like, not happening. This is my child. This is my nanny. This is me. I need a visa for all of us. I know I'm a US citizen. I just need a visa. And he took all of our passports and he went upstairs somewhere to work. And I just waited for, I don't even remember, like 3 or 4 hours in the lobby. I just waited. I just sat.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Really?
Oh my God.
What were your thoughts when you're just sitting there waiting, wondering if you're going to get to go or not?
I'll say I was pretty numb. So it was less, I had started texting with my brother and one of my other cousins because they were starting to question, like, when are you, first it was, I was texting with my brother that like, don't do anything, I'm coming. For me, I don't know what it was inside of me, but I just told him that you have to wait and I'm coming. It will take me a little bit of time, but I'm coming and you have to wait.
Yeah.
And then I think at that time it was just 50% of this. Let's just try to like, my other cousin, like texting with me and asking like, okay, because my brother, we were all affected differently as compared to when it's, one level away, like one of my cousins talking to me more logistically or asking what the situation is and everything. So I was talking about it, that I'm waiting at the visa office, and all of that. And then the other 50% was filling up forms that the person was sending me for the three of us, getting cash from an ATM to pay for the visa because I could only pay. I don't know. It was just so complicated. Now I'm in Slovenia, whatever is happening, and then I have to give them this cash. And then to apply for the visa, they needed, I think we also had to like book flights to show to them.
Oh yeah, probably.
Right.
So I was on phone with and then I didn't have a laptop, or I didn't have like, I don't know, or I didn't have like, there was no Wi-Fi, something like that. So I was on the phone with my husband who was booking the flights for me, sending me the documents as well, for me, for my daughter, that whatever documents like a birth certificate, I think, for my daughter or whatever they needed. He was supplying those documents to me and I was sending it to this person who was sitting upstairs. So half of it was just that. And just, and just manage. Yeah. And then even though it was so emotional, but at the same time, I felt like my logical sense had like, I mean, for everyone, it will work like that because I made sure I had like enough charger for my, charger for my devices, for the iPad for my kids. So she can be like, so she's kind of like contained and all that. And in between all of that, right? Like my 2-year-old still needs me. I have a nanny, but she's just looking, she's like, where am I? And what am I doing here? And all that. So there's also that to keep you, to kind of like, for you to just keep going. And I will say like, yeah, I feel like I was just numb. And meanwhile, my brother had started sending me 1 or 2 photos, and I would maybe like delve in it for a second or two, and then get out of it. Because to me, it felt like it wasn't the time, it wasn't the place for me to be able to forget dreaming, or to even put it in my head that like this has happened. It became so practical and so logistical.
Yeah, you're just in execution mode. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I need my visa. That's all for me. And then that the office had shut. Everyone left the office. Everyone left that office because they shut at 4 or 5. And I texted that person because because we were texting and he was telling me the document. I was like, listen, this office is locked. How will we get out? Because I didn't know where he was. I was just sitting in the lobby and I knew I'm locked inside here and I don't see anyone anymore. And everyone has left and you can't open the door from inside.
Oh my gosh.
So I was just like, so no, he was like, no, I'm here. I'm working upstairs, or whatever. So it's also like kind of like trusting that person, whoever, okay, it will work out. But he came after whatever, 3 or 4 hours. Three of us, my nanny, my kid, and myself, we had a visa.
Wow. That is like amazing.
Yeah. Later on, much later on, there are a few people who said I wouldn't have even gone because I couldn't even guess that it will work out.
Right. So you get the visas and then you get your flights. So you fly out the next day, right?
Yeah, the next morning. Yeah, by this time, my husband has booked another Airbnb in Ljubljana because that's where we are now. We didn't have a place to stay, and the flight. So we decided that we were going to be there. We'll find an Airbnb anyhow.
Yeah.
This is where we booked the flight from the next morning. So the next morning we had the flight, but we had to fly to Germany to, I don't know if it was Lufthansa. I think we had to fly to Frankfurt and then stop over and all of that. And I remember during the whole time, like I think until I reached home or whatever, I was frozen in the sense that I could, I think I was pretty blank. I couldn't eat. I just couldn't do much. I couldn't do anything. I would just, my nanny and my husband, they were trying to like get food or something or whatever. And I could barely drink water. I could barely like put water down my throat. So I feel I just blocked myself in some ways that it became about like, I need to, I need to go.
So when you get there and you finally get to your mom, and your family, what happens?
So I don't remember if it was a flight delay or luggage. We got our luggage late, but we were supposed to arrive I think Saturday late night, but due to all these delays and getting our luggage a little later, we only get to, at the airport, we get to the car where, some people have come to pick us up around, it's pretty much like 4 a.m. or something like that. It's no more midnight.
Oh, shit.
So we are already at Sunday morning, 4 a.m. And they had decided for all the cremation, everything to start Sunday early morning, right at sunrise. It's already 4 a.m. And my kid didn't, whatever she was, it didn't matter whether she was sleeping in the flight or not. And the moment we sit in the car to drive home, my 2-year-old falls asleep on me and I'm holding her. And forget, not just my mom. I'm going to India with my kid and everyone is meeting her for the first time.
Oh, wow. Right.
So it's, so for me, it was, I was holding my 2-year-old. I had the sound, I had the white noise running on my phone and I'm holding her. And when we arrived to this, and I haven't been to this house where my parents were, they were living at the moment. I go there and my sister and a few of my cousins, they're downstairs. They're waiting outside the gate. And I think it's when I saw them, I just broke down. I think that was my moment of like, what in this world just happened? I think that's when it was like, what am I, why am I here? What am I doing here? What, like, those questions of like, what happened and how it happened. And like, because until now I hadn't even asked anyone, like, what happened? Like, what was how did it lead to this? Or was there an incident or nothing, right? There was I didn't have the bandwidth to ask anyone. And I'm assuming people back home didn't have the bandwidth to share any of it. So there was until now for me, there was no backstory. And I look at them and that's when I break down. And for me, it was, I can't explain that I can put it into words how it feels, to take your firstborn kid to your mom who is not there anymore.
Yeah, I can't.
And she never got to meet her.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Mhm.
no. She never got to meet her. I didn't have my mom when I was pregnant, when I gave birth, when the baby was like nothing, right? And of course, because of COVID, but you always think like, yeah, things are opening up slowly and we figure it out. But and it's not like I used to be someone who always used to think about, oh, I really want my mom to spend this much time with my kid, but I think somehow you take some things for granted that, yeah, it's going to happen. Your mom's going
Yeah.
to meet your kid. It's going to happen
Yes.
until a time when it's taken away.
Yeah.
And it's
So true.
It's like, no, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah. It's those failed expectations that we have, right? Like
Yeah.
we just inherently expect these things to happen. I just thought, yeah, of course I'm going to grow old with my wife. Like that's a given. And then when those things are taken away from you, it's a very big jarring thing to the emotional system to have to be like, oh, right, things change very fast. Life is very ephemeral.
Yeah.
So you guys are out there for the to say goodbye to her and go through all of that, and then you come home. What is it like adjusting back home after
Yeah.
going through all of that with your mom?
I think in my initial few months, I just wanted to be alone.
Mm.
I didn't want to see people. And of course, I told that to my husband that, like, I know, because we live here, so we have our friends here who are like family, like, we have our community here. But I just didn't feel, it wasn't about being ready. I think I spent about during that trip, I spent about 3 weeks in India at the time, but I still don't think it was that you process anything, because there's still stuff going on, there's so many people visiting. And
Yeah. Did they have all of the kind of ceremonies that are? Did they have all the ceremonies and funerals and things like that while you were
yeah,
there for those 3 weeks?
yes, yeah. So of course there's the cremation, and then the rituals that they follow are like, it's over a period of 13 days, and every day there's some ritual, and on the 13th day there's like a big feast. So you can imagine that for the first 13 days, and maybe it comes from the sense that, like, people, the immediate family is kind of not left alone. And so there are people coming in, and anyway, even if you don't have the rituals, I feel initially there are always people coming in. It's more like you asked, like, what happens when you go home, right?
Right.
What happens when you're done with the things that you do? So for me, I was very clear that I knew that I can't see anyone. And I'm not sure whether it was because, no, I'm not ready to face it myself, or I don't want to talk about my mother, or I don't want people to look at me like with sympathy, because I felt like I don't want it.
Yeah.
I was okay to meet people I don't know, in the sense, yeah, I went back to work and all that stuff, but when it came to, like, people I knew, it was just like, no, I don't want to see anyone right now. And then I felt like, over time, I don't know, it also gave me that sense of, like, I don't know how I developed that, but that sense of, like, knowing and understanding at a deeper level, that who are those
Mm.
people who do really truly care about you, versus who are there, who hang out with you. I don't know how that thing developed, but over time, as slowly I started meeting with people, you also, or maybe it gives you perspective. You realize what you value in people, and who you value, and who you want to be in your life, and who are the people who are just there, kind of, which
Mm-hmm.
was, I don't know how to relate to it exactly, but I think I went through that phase of like, yeah, that because, and maybe it comes from, again, and that can be conflicting because, you know, in one place I was like, I don't want sympathy. I don't want to have people come at me and, you know, talk to me about this and that or whatever. But at the same time, I've had people who even today check in on me, who check in on me from a perspective of the loss that I've had, who don't like shy away from it. And then there are people who, you know, it's not about, oh, you didn't check in. Again, it's not that thing of like, oh, I want everyone to check in, but then, you know, so you start seeing some things from a different perspective of like, what does my life mean to me? What do these people who exist in my life mean to me?
Yeah. It gives you an opportunity to reflect on what actually is valuable in your life and what's valuable in your relationships with the people around you. And it makes sense too. Like I had that same sense. And initially I was just like, it was really hard to be around people. It was especially hard to be around people that like family and friends who I was around with my wife. So I was just like, okay, I can't engage with them because it's just a reminder of what things used to be. And then, yeah, I think the difference is that energy that people bring. Like, it's like, yeah, you don't want, you want people to care and to sit with you when you're feeling really crappy, right? It's like you want somebody who's just like, okay, then I'm going to feel crappy with you.
Yeah.
And I'm here and there's no expectation that you need to get better. There's no expectation that you need to, you know, say something. Like it's just, let's just sit here. And I think that's the difference between like, that's what we truly crave versus that like false sympathy or that pity. And not that people do it on purpose, but there's a lot of energy behind this idea of just like, oh, how are you? As like, are you okay? Can we just kind of move on? And like, are you happy again? And whatever happiness even means. And it's just like, it feels like a complete disregard for how much pain we're in. Right.
Yeah, I totally see that. And I think the word that comes to my mind is like, I think I feel like I let go of a bunch of like obligatory stuff that I would do with people.
Yes.
Because I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm not,
yeah,
it's weird because I feel like, how did this loss make me kind of fearless in some way? Because now it's like, it's that question of like, well, what's left, right? So somehow I've let go of the obligations that I used to like have earlier, and I feel like that's not what my life is about anymore. Especially to people, like to do something because in society we do things
that's right.
in a certain way, which I had sort of had earlier, but I think now it's become more in my face now that I'm like, no, I care about fewer things now. I don't care about the whole world. I don't have the capacity to care about the whole world.
Yeah, 100%. And that happened to me too. And that happened like once my wife got diagnosed. I think it just slowly became this idea of like, okay, we're on a timetable. So much of this other stuff that we used to like get so stressed about or worried about, it just doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, like it's not going to change anything. There's nothing I can do about it. And there's more important things to worry about in my immediate vicinity. I'm wondering, like, in this time, because you're coming up on a year in 2 days,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the 22nd. That is a fresh situation to be in. And I'm curious about how this year has progressed for you, getting pregnant, having your daughter, and then losing your mom, and now not having her again.
Yeah.
Right? It's like these two instances where there was factors outside of your control that you were not allowed to have your mom with you for this while having such a fresh situation. Has it changed your relationship to your daughter and your parenting in any way?
Yeah. So before I get into that, I do want to say, like I was talking to my, also something funny happened that I think when I was in India, I called my then therapist and I said, I want to stop. I think somehow I felt like disconnecting with people that I don't need to be with at that time. So for me, it's become like when mom was there, and now when mom is not there. And I felt so weird about it. I was like, but it just didn't feel right to go back to the same person. Anyway, but to her, when I, had a last conversation with her, and I was telling her that, I was pregnant with my first kid. COVID hit. I was in my third trimester. I had a baby. Me and my husband did it all by ourselves. Our first year was really bad because there was zero support. And we were like alone here and just figuring it out and not getting enough sleep and, all that stuff. So it was really hard on our relationship and us figuring out this new life together. And we were people who would travel to go to Michelin star restaurants to a different country, who would backpack twice a year internationally, who would just like go to like UK or somewhere for someone's birthday party. When I was pregnant with my first one, I traveled every single month. We went from there to, yes, COVID hit, and we were at home with the baby. And that happened. And then I lost my mom. And then I don't know which one happened first, but I lost my job because of layoffs. I used to work for Amazon, and I got pregnant. And then I think that was when, not at the moment, but I think after a few months in my head, I was like, to me, initially, it was like, wow, I'm not religious, but still it comes to your mind, right? That like, I wasn't meant it's not in my destiny to have a mother while I go through this mothering stuff, while I'm a mom, while I'm getting pregnant. I don't have it in my life, right? And I feel like, and I'm sure there are other people like that, but I feel like I haven't met anyone like that in my own closed circle. Because even today, not many, but so many instances where people are like, "Oh, your mom's not coming," and you can't blame them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's, we live abroad, we live here, and the first thing is like,
that's when I say, no, she's dead. Make them real uncomfortable.
I'm just like, no, she's not coming. I'm just like, so that's one. And then for me, I think there are moments when, I don't know about, general parenting, like it's so hard. My first one is like 3 years old now. And so I'm still early, like just 3 years into the whole parenthood thing. But I think the moments like, for example, when my daughter is sick and I'm like taking care of her, whatever, there are moments when I remember my mom being close to me when I used to be sick as a child. And I tell this, and then it's really weird how I remember her from when I was in between 10 to 20 years old is the time from when I actually seek memories mostly. Like those are the parts of her that come back to me far more than, later. I mean, before I might not remember as much, but not so much from the recent times, but it's more from that time. And that makes me wonder sometimes that, is it that age when kids are getting so much from you, who you are as a person, how you behave, the things you do with them? Is it that age when you're impacting them the most? And they're also like remembering those things and keeping it with them, and also in turn like shaping their personality. Like during when I was between 10 to 20, my mother used to work. She used to work my parents owned a leather shoes factory at the time. She used to work at the factory with him and all of that. So remember her going to work. I remember her making sure there was enough childcare at home, and and when they came back, she made sure that that we only spend time together and all the homework was done, that there was, that all we do is like family time together once they're back from work. We're not doing any more homework after that. You got to do it like before that, right? So putting importance on that. And then of course, for that time, being in India, being independent, living your own life, not following the status quo at the time. Some of the things that I feel like I relate to, but yeah, it's just weird for me how those times come back to me so much more. And I couldn't have guessed that this is how it's going to be when she's not here anymore. I couldn't have guessed like that those are the times that I will go back to the most, or remembering that like, yeah, even if it's late at night or whatever, like she would be up with me if I'm not feeling well. Like these little things, you know.
Yeah. Do you feel like you want to replicate that with your daughter now, or with your kids?
I you know, I can't say if it's about replicating that, but there are moments when, for example, again, I find myself replicating that. Let's just say that.
Right.
So when I'm in those
Yeah.
moments in the dark, when it's night, when it's 2 a.m. and I'm dead by then, and right when my kid is like, and she's either not able to fall asleep or she's sick. It can be any of the things, not necessarily she's sick, but she needs me. And then I remember the time, and then I go back to the times when, even in high school, sometimes if I wasn't able to fall asleep, I would call my mom on her phone in the next room and ask her to come and sleep in my
No
room.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember like I've done this, you know, like it was just 3 years old, but yeah, those are the times when you're like, yeah, she was, you know, she was there.
Yeah.
It's a thing of
Right.
like, no matter what, she, you know, she was there, and it's crazy how I think about it. Like, wow, that's what I remember. But you know, in today's parenting style or whatever, especially with kids, the modern society tells you that you've got to tell your kids, nope, you go back to sleep by yourself, and you're gonna see me for a minute, I'm leaving. So I feel guilty, right? So I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so it is so conflicting sometimes, and I'm like, but those are the things I remember. Those your own as a kid, you know, whatever those weak moments are, because as kids, it's not about the big things when you're a kid. It's about those small, tiny things happening in your life. That's because those things are your life at the moment. So doing the extra push for your kids, standing up for your kids, doing things like that. Like I didn't notice it yesterday, but today my daughter had this bear picnic, and I went to drop her to school. Everyone had a toy, and I was like, I missed something here. So I came back home, and I took a toy back to her school. So it's doing those extra things, and I think it's in those tiny moments that I like, that come back to me. So it's less of like I try to replicate it, but in things when I see myself doing it, and I'm like, because I've experienced it, because I know what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I wonder if in some sense, right, you've mentioned how you feel like you weren't destined to have your mom with you, with your kids. And obviously, you know, she's not here, unfortunately. But it feels like like she is in some sense, right? Like those lessons that stick with you. It's not the same situation, but I remember sitting down. It was like maybe the third or fourth day in hospice. We only had 5 days of hospice when my wife died. And Ashley's dad, actually.
Gosh, that feels like it was much longer than 5 days.
I know, it's only 5 days. The 25th to the 30th. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
So Ashley was there, right? Because so we're cousins, and she was in town, and her dad helped me through it, you know, because he lost his wife, Ashley's mom. And I remember sitting down on my couch and just kind of not really there. Like I kind of broke a little bit mentally. And he started telling me how even though Ariana is not going to be here, my wife won't be here, she taught me everything that I needed to know. And I didn't know how to receive that at first. But I think especially in that first year, maybe that first year and a half, I really started to understand what he was saying, how like the decisions that I had to make with the kids, which I mean, to this day, I hate it. I hate having to be the sole decision maker. It's like we always conferred together, and she made so many good decisions where I'm like, I struggle with that. But knowing what the decision she would make, and like just seeing all those things that I observed through the 20 years that her and I were together. So yeah, it feels like in some way you're being parented by your mom to help you with your kids. But I think in a stronger sense, is there anything that you do, any rituals, any just practices that you have to tap into kind of that connection with your mom?
I don't.
Mm.
I don't. And I've thought about, I've tried to think about it. I've tried to think about, like, sometimes I feel like at 1 year, should I do something? And I don't know why, but I connect, but somehow, at least right now, it feels like, oh, if I do something, people are going to look at me.
What do you mean? They're going to look at you.
That like, maybe it's about that that I'm not ready, or I don't want people to see the wound that I have. I feel like if I try to, for example, things like, should I cook something that she used to cook in a certain way? Should I go out and do something? And to me, it feels like, or if I do something, there's this feeling of like, oh, people will know, or they'll look at me in a certain way. And I feel like it still takes me back to the time when I didn't want to talk to people, because I was like, I don't want is sympathy. And I wonder if that sympathy is actually, it's like, I don't want unnecessary people. I don't want unnecessary attention. Yeah. But of course, you can say that that's giving too much importance to the external world somehow, right? Because what I'm not able to do is like go into myself, tap into myself, and express things in a certain way. Yeah. And I'll be honest, like, like, I also haven't had, as a young parent, and me and my husband, we both got laid off in January. We came back in September 2022. Earlier this year, after 3 months, we found jobs. But these things, they make you busy in life, and we have a toddler at home. I don't have a lot of free time to begin with. So there are, and I think the effect it has on me is that there are nights when I wake up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. thinking about mom, and I can't go back to sleep. Like I have that, but and it's interesting you say that about the rituals tied to my mom, because my brother was talking to me, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's interesting. He's 9 years younger to me, and it's so interesting the way he thinks about her legacy and the things that he would do that would, in his way, like he feels like would make her. So he was asking me, why don't you celebrate this specific Indian festival and all that? And I was like, it's about what you value, what you want to do. So for him, he was like, but you don't do anything Indian festival, religiously, ritual style. And that's what mommy would have wanted you to. And I was like, stop there. It's for each of us to take what we take from our parents. Yeah. And I find it so interesting that the things that I took from her are so different from the things that he thinks about in his own head. It's just not the same. For me, it was about living your own life, standing up for yourself, questioning everything, because she lived in a big and a bold way. My family didn't do really well with the business and everything that they had. So we were in a lot of debt. We even lost our house that they owned, over the years. And so maybe it's about the phase that you see in your parents, the time you spend with them, and what you take. It's so different for me. So I don't have a ritual attached to it. Yeah.
Each sibling has like a very different experience, because, like you said, like you were born, or you went through and really remember the time that maybe you lost the house, whereas your brother, being 9 years younger, doesn't necessarily remember that. Or he, remembers like leaving the house, but maybe just kind of thought he was moving or what.
Yeah. Or he remembers the struggle that they had, and that my mom got more and more religious over the years, right? That's what he is.
Right.
And for me, for me, I saw that, but I also saw what was before that, which he was kind of a part of, but he was much younger, maybe. But for me, and also but then I have an elder sister who's 3 years older to me, and we are just totally apart. Like she's very traditional. Like she can probably cook. I can't even cook like my mom. She can cook like my mom, probably. She can do those things. And I was among my siblings. I like, actually, both for my husband and myself, somehow we are people who are the only ones in our entire families who left home, to study, to do something. None of our family members.
That's definitely another dynamic, I'm sure, to, But I think going back to your point around kind of not wanting others to maybe see or feel sympathy and so, I think a lot of people that have come on the show, I think a lot of them do silent like rituals or quiet rituals, that like they do make a, sometimes some years on my mom's birthday, like I don't celebrate it really, but I get a pack of Twizzlers and I just have like eat Twizzlers, but no one else really realizes,
what you're doing.
like, but that was like her favorite candy. And it's just a small way. And this is definitely more like millennial Gen Z, but my siblings and I will, some years we post a photo, on her anniversary, on her death anniversary, as we like to say, or her birthday. But some years we don't, we kind of just like, and it's, it's not like we want the day to go by and like people don't think that we remember her, but it's just like, it's not something that we want to really even have, like, we don't want to have it, or I won't speak for them. I don't want to have it acknowledged. Like, I know people will send wishes and like all of that stuff. So like, I think it also ebbs and flows. Like some years I'm a little bit more quiet and reserved about it. And some years, hosting a fundraiser to, on her 20th anniversary, that was like sort of towards the end of COVID, but like virtual events they're still actually a thing. So I had like a virtual wine raiser and raised money in her honor for breast cancer. So I think it also just changes. This year it's year one. You might not want to do anything.
Yeah, I think that also reminds me, my dad is actually having this big event at the 1 year thing, and which none of the kids are happy about. And he's doing this big event, and there's going to be this movie, in his own words, he's making a short movie about my mom's life, and he's going to show it to people. And he wants to give some awards to some women in the name of women empowerment. And there's going to be, my brother he's a lawyer, but he's also a classical singer. So he's going to do some stuff, whatever. And he's doing this whole big thing. And the kids are like, no, this is not how we see it. But, and, of course, me and my brother and my sister, we were talking, and something I tell them is like, listen, he lost a partner. That's one. And second, how we all grieve is very different. He is an extroverted person. This is his way of moving on in life, probably of getting people together, meeting people. That's what he has to do now, because all his kids are busy. We are all, whatever it is. We have stuff to problem solve in our lives. He doesn't. That's one. And I got to this because it's interesting you asked. I think another perspective that I've gained over time is that, like, I think for me, having this loss, which I don't think it's fully come inside of me. Like when you were talking, Ashley, when you were talking about calling it, I'm not even there when I can call it a death anniversary. I'm not even there yet. I'm not even there when I'm ready to say that it's going to be, I feel like I'm afraid of like facing that. I'm not ready. I don't feel ready. Because I think for me, I feel like I never got over the shock of getting this news over a text message while being so far away. I just don't know. For me, it was like, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I could have like had that conversation, that what if something happened? What would you want? Or like, talk to me about your life or something. Never. I didn't do any of it. Forget visiting or whatever, right? Just catching a flight, but I didn't do any sort of it. So for me, it was just like, it's gone. I mean, later I realized, she had fever for 3 days, and, so I'm not saying that anyone was ready, but I feel like for me, over a text message, like, no, this is not, it's a thing we dread, living so far away. When COVID hit and there was this certain variant in India that was killing people a lot. Like every time I'll call home, they will be like, oh, this person we knew, they died. And me and my husband had this conversation that, like, if something happens to our parents, we can't go right now because we have a baby in the house and we have no help. Right. So you do, but when something like this happens, I just don't know how to process it. But over the past year, something that gave me some perspective also, like, for example, like I said, that I got pregnant, and then, you know, I'm holding a lot of joy and a lot of grief together at the same time. And in turn, I looked at some other things. So, me and my husband, it's going to be in September, it's going to be our 10th wedding anniversary. I'm going to turn 40 in November. And it was my idea. And I told my husband that we should do something. We should celebrate. And if I'm being true to myself, I think there is a hint of, underneath it all, there is that hint of like, I can't comprehend this loss, but I can repeat it in the sense I feel and I understand gratitude much more now. And I value, and I need, and I should acknowledge and value the things that I have today. And I know that while people might not see that, might look at that celebration as like, oh, I'm just coming out of a year of losing my mom. But I think for me internally, it's about holding those two things together and saying that, no, I might never be able to make sense of this loss. I might, it, for various reasons, that it was too much of a shock for me, or the regrets that someone has, I guess, with any loss, that doing things differently. But at the same time, it's given me this sense of like, well, what I do have today is a partner. I have a healthy child. For me, more than my husband, I feel like for me, I wanted a second child because for whatever reason, I was like, no, I see a family like of more than one child as a family, like, and I have that. So for me, it became really hard to not look at it with so much more gratitude that I don't know that I would have had if this wouldn't have happened. So it's odd. It's hard to explain.
It's really great to have the perspective, I think, kind of like so early on, almost a year, 363 days. I think a lot of our guests have been, 3, 5, 7+ years. And I think it's really important that, I know we have listeners that have lost people recently in the last year and, are approaching kind of like year 1, year 2. So I think it's really interesting to get that kind of like first year perspective.
Also, I want to call out too, I really appreciate your openness and your honesty to be like, I'm not ready to face it. I don't want to deal with that, or I'm just not ready. Like, I think in just saying those statements, there's so much power and the potential to heal in this, but holding the duality of like, I have this grief and I have this joy, and I have this grief and I have this joy, and you go in and out, in and out, in and out. Like, that is the thing that I think is a constant for everybody who ends up going into this significant loss, especially when it's in like, early stages of our lives like that. So it is hard to wrap your head around like, how am I going to be grateful? How can I hold on to joy, but I still like have this pit in my stomach that's just like, it tears me up. And I think that is like one of the hardest things, because you do have to face it, right? Like, it's just that thing that's there. And like, we've had guests who are like, yeah, it took me 20 years and then I finally faced it, or it took me 5 years, or whatever it is. And I think societally, or even like as a world, I would assume, but like at least in the States, like, we feel like, oh, loss happens, time passes, you heal, and then you're fine. Or like, you're okay-ish, but it's like, no, like, time passes, but it's what you do with that time that determines how much healing you're going to have from that grief, and that the grief never goes away. But the quote that whole amazing thing that you were talking about of the gratitude is that the author was saying that it turns out that what makes us happiest is not having what we want, but wanting what we have. And I feel like when I was listening to you, it was just that sense where you're just like, oh, now I'm just wanting with what I have. and
Yeah.
finding peace and joy in that. And I think that's amazing. And man, I think like that's what everybody's striving for, but we just don't have the words to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, it's, while I went through all this year, but there were these moments of when I felt like I still, I still, it's not about faking it or anything, but it's for me, it's like, but I still got to be present for my partner. I have
Right.
him. I still
Right.
got to be present for my kid. I have her.
Mhm.
I'm pregnant. I have to take care of myself. This is, I wanted this. Like, I have to be there. What you don't want is like not to be present in those
Yeah.
times. And of course, like
Yeah.
I've set up a whole, I'm just spending money. Like I'm getting an au pair, or like a live-in nanny. I'm getting a night
Mm.
nurse. I'm just throwing money at these things and setting up this like whole thing of like, hopefully everything goes well, because the medical world has been saying you're 40, you're going to give birth. It's risky, whatever. So, but I'm setting up for it, right? And because I want to be present. And something I didn't mention earlier, I wonder why, but I think it's lonely, it's still lonely. You
Yes,
do all
it
this, you
is.
have all these
Yeah.
people, and you find your group and you find your footing again, and you go to your job and you do the things in life, but it's still lonely. So I've set up these things so that again, I'm present for those who are here physically. It's, there's no, I'm not going to shy away from saying that it's really hard sometimes, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
like it hits you in the sadness hits you in the most random moments when everything is fine and normal, and you look around and you're like, I just want to go in a shell right now. I'm not, or the triggers that you start having. Like, it was, I think last month, it was one of my husband's relatives' 85th birthday, and I was like, I can't go.
Mm.
I was like, I don't feel ready to celebrate some other person's long life, and I know I will be one day. I just can't be
Mhm.
there, and I wish well for them and the whole world, right? But I feel like I'm just, it's not going to be good for me.
It's interesting though, because you said like you're not ready to to confront it and all that stuff, but the more you talk, the more I just keep hearing like all these things you're doing for yourself and self-care and to be present. Like that is confronting it, right?
Yeah,
You're like, I'm going to get these things so I can be present with my child and with my partner, and I'm doing mental and health, and I'm doing the physical health. Like you are showing up for yourself, and I think that's amazing, right? Like especially in that first year, like it is hard to even get out of bed
yeah,
sometimes. And I just remember just that struggle. And it took, I mean, sometimes it's still a struggle, but it's just, yeah, I see you showing up for yourself. I think, I think you're doing more for your grief than you realize.
yeah. No, it was just yesterday actually. Like, yeah, I was telling like yesterday I was working from home and my husband went out to work and he came back, and I was like, today I just sat on the couch.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do anything. And I was like, I was home, but I couldn't do much at work. I just like ordered food and I maybe watched some TV, and I just had to let the day go by somehow,
Yes.
until of course the whole the thing, the whatever, the routines of life call you back. That like, you got to go pick up your kid, you got to make dinner, you got to do things. Uh, and
Mhm.
like I said, because I don't have a lot of those where it's like I don't have much to do. I have empty time. There's not a lot of that. But I still have those moments where like, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, and then sometimes I'm just zoned out. I'm just like, I don't know how, I just don't know what to think or how to process. And I keep going back to those moments of like when I got the message, or like trying to think about like, but she was not well 3 days before, and why didn't anyone tell me? Like, why
Right.
wasn't I aware?
Yeah.
And there's, and those are hard conversations to have with your family members, right? Because they were probably dealing with it in the best way at the moment, but you being far away, you're just like, why didn't I know? Could I have done something differently? Could I have gone, and I don't know what I could have stopped or not stopped. I don't know.
Do you feel like you have anger? Have you had anger in this first year? Any sense of it?
I will say more frustration than anger. And that frustration is built up from this, I don't know how to say it. Maybe sadness is the closest word, but there are these moments, right? When all your work is done, you pick up your phone, you're like, okay, I have a minute. I'm going to call mom. And I don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you're, and it just, that's how I guess people, I don't know if everyone's like that, but at least I am like that. I used to be like that like when everything is done and everything is fine, settled, and I have a second, I'm like, now I'm going to call her. So it's just like, I go into that and it's not even a second, it's a split second. And I'm like, I don't have that. I don't have, so in some ways it feels like I have lost my grounding and I don't know how to find it again. That thing of like, okay, I'll just call her. Like, and I still can't believe that I don't have that. And these are the things that, I'm talking to you about it right now because we are openly talking about this loss and grief, right? But we don't do that. We don't, you don't sit and talk about it. Even with your friends, like you don't sit down and let's talk about this, that's not very common.
Most people are just like, you're okay, so let's just do something else.
Let's just change the subject.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just tell me you're fine and you're the old person that you used to be and everything's going to be great. So we like to ask before we end the show if there is any one piece of advice that you have for somebody who would be in your situation or for somebody who is a friend to or caring for somebody who is going through what you've been through.
I think for the first piece, it's accepting that grief can be and is lonely, and it's okay for it to be so. Because I'm usually not a lonely person. Yeah, I talk to one friend, I'm fine or whatever. But I will say that it's accepting that, yeah, it's lonely. And sometimes even the people you're closest to, like your own partner, like me and my husband, yeah, we talk about everything, but it's still hard for other people to. He lost his father when he was 17 or 18, I think. And he grieved very differently, completely different. It's just something, not just like me at all. And then for people who are caring for people who are going through something, I will say to not be afraid of bringing it up. I will say bring it up more. Let people cry,
Yes.
Let people talk it out. Because even though one of my therapists I don't work with her anymore, but one of her advices was like, schedule time every day to think about your mom. And it was just like, yeah, I get it, but I can't. But yeah, you don't need to hide their name or hide it, or it's more like how you're like, yes, grief is lonely. You face it for the person, and for other people who are caring, I feel like, yeah, go ahead and talk about it. Like, it's like calling that person's names so that, and it's not about like, I think I now understand why some people say that it's not about it's not important, or it's not about how someone died. It's more about how they lived. What was their relationship with this person? What were those things like? Because a lot of times you meet people and if you tell them, and I think that's why I don't like to talk to people, because the most important thing is like, oh, how did it happen? It's just like, it's not about the cancer. It's not about that. It's about my relationship with that person. It's more about the life they lived, the relationship with that person. Let's talk about that. Right. So I think that to the other person, like I said, it's about, no, there's no shying away from it. And even if it's like mini conversations, I feel like that can help with the healing. And I feel like it's not done enough, because I think people, and I get it that it's not easy. I think because I have gone through it, seen it so up close, and so have you. And so it's easy for us to come together and understand the vibe and understand what goes and what's okay, what's not okay. But for those who haven't, it's like, I don't know what's on the table and what's not.
Yeah. I think it's so well said, right? It's like, it's okay to bring it up and not shy away. And it's the shying away that makes it very difficult. So yeah, I think that's awesome. And it's interesting because that is definitely a common theme that we hear, that we keep hearing. It's just like people saying, I wish somebody would ask me about the person that I lost, because it's always present for us.
Yeah.
It's not like asking is going to make us feel bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like we already feel bad.
Yeah.
So just
Well,
ask
that's
us
there.
and we might feel better. Yeah. But we are very grateful that you came on the podcast, and thank you for sharing so much and for being so open. You know, good luck with the anniversary. You know, do whatever it is you feel you need to do. And I wanted to call out again too, Ashley, what you mentioned about how each year is different for you and even for your siblings, because that anniversary is approaching for me. So my wife's death anniversary is in September. Mm-hmm. And I literally just asked the kids like a couple hours ago, what are we going to do? And everybody's kind of just like, I don't know. And I feel like you bringing that up is giving people permission to be like, you don't always have to do something. Because I kind of this year just feel like I just want to be alone and do nothing and just let it pass in the world and just be alone. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's important that we call that out, that you have permission to do whatever the fuck you want. Like it's your time to grieve. It's your time to do what you want. And we don't have to put these expectations on ourselves.
No.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.